When the boys first introduced Kimiko and Frenchie, it felt like one of the strongest relationships in the entire show, but not because of romance. That's the key difference. It was connection, it was trauma, it was survival, and honestly, that's what made it special. But somewhere along the way, the boys started steering their relationship into romantic territory, and I'm gonna say it. That might have been a mistake. Now, before everybody jumps into the comments and starts defending this relationship, hear me out. Because this isn't about whether Kimiko and Frenchie care about each other. They absolutely do. This is about whether turning that bond into romance actually made the story better. And I'd argue it didn't. In fact, it might have weakened what made them compelling in the first place. Let's talk about it. From the beginning, Kimiko and Frenchie had something rare on television. A bond that didn't need cliches. Frenchie wasn't trying to save Kimiko, and Kimiko wasn't there to fix Frenchie. They were broken people who understood each other. That's what made it work. Frenchie saw Kimiko as a person, not a weapon. And Kimiko trusted Frenchie in ways she didn't trust anyone else. It felt raw, authentic, earned. And the beauty of it was that it didn't need romance. That's the thing people forget. Not every meaningful relationship has to become romantic. Sometimes platonic love is stronger. Sometimes emotional intimacy without romance is more powerful. And honestly, Kimiko and Frenchie were one of the best examples of that, until the show changed the formula. And here's the problem. The moment writers push romance into a dynamic like this, the relationship changes, the tension changes, the stakes change, and not always for the better. Before, their relationship felt unpredictable. It was layered, complicated, messy. But once romance entered the picture, it started feeling expected, almost conventional. And that's weird for a show like The Boys. This is a series built on subverting expectations, destroying superhero tropes, flipping conventions upside down. So why fall into one of the oldest storytelling habits? Too close characters? Make them romantic. It feels lazy. And with Kimiko and Frenchie, it feels unnecessary. What made their bond stand out was how deeply they loved each other without needing labels. That was refreshing, especially in a world as chaotic as theirs. And let's be honest, Frenchie as a character already carries a lot. His guilt, his addictions, his violent past, his emotional instability, his complicated history with people like little Nina. Adding romance with Kimiko doesn't simplify that. It complicates it. And not always in an interesting way. Sometimes it feels like Frenchie's emotional arc gets trapped in this cycle of dependency, like he needs Kimiko to heal. And that's dangerous storytelling, because healing shouldn't depend on romance. And Kimiko? Her story deserves more than being tied to Frenchie's emotional journey. Kimiko's character is fascinating on her own. Her trauma, her identity, her struggle with violence, her humanity, her relationship with her brother, her fight for agency. Those stories matter. But romance can sometimes reduce that complexity. Not intentionally, but it happens. Instead of Kimiko being her own fully independent emotional center, parts of her arc start revolving around Frenchie. And that's where things get messy. Because Kimiko's journey was always about reclaiming herself, her voice, her choices, her freedom. And while Frenchie supports that, romance changes the lens, it shifts focus. Now, to be fair, there are arguments for why the romance works. Chemistry? Absolutely. No one can deny that. The actors have incredible chemistry, their scenes feel real, their affection feels genuine. And emotionally, it makes sense that two deeply traumatized people would form a romantic bond. That part is believable. But believable doesn't always mean necessary. That's the difference. Just because romance can happen doesn't mean it should. And in storytelling, preserving what makes a relationship unique matters. Look at some of the best partnerships in television. Not all of them needed romance to matter. Some relationships become stronger because they resist that route. Kimiko and Frenchie could have been that. A rare example of unconditional love without romantic expectation. That would have been powerful, especially in modern television. And let's talk about timing. By the later seasons of The Boys, the show already has a lot going on. Homelander spiraling, Billy Butcher dying, Starlight versus Vought, Ryan Butcher becoming a major wildcard, the political chaos, the soup war, the endgame. So where does Kimiko and Frenchie romance fit into that? Sometimes it feels like narrative space being used on a subplot that doesn't move the bigger story. And in a show this tight, every storyline matters. That's not to say it's bad, it's just less impactful than what it could have been, because their strongest scenes were never romantic. Think about it. Frenchie teaching Kimiko, Kimiko protecting Frenchie, their silent understanding, their emotional support. That's the magic, not kissing, not romance. Connection. That's what people fell in love with. Ironically, not them falling in love. And maybe that's the biggest issue, turning them romantic risks, making their relationship feel smaller, less universal. Because friendship, loyalty, and chosen family, those themes hit harder, especially in The Boys, a show where almost every relationship is transactional, manipulative, or broken. Kimiko and Frenchie being pure platonic soulmates would have stood out more. It would have meant more. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the romance is the natural evolution. Maybe this was always where their story was heading. Maybe it deepens their bond instead of limiting it. That's the debate. And honestly, that's why this relationship is so interesting. Because whether you love it or hate it, it makes people feel something. And that's what good storytelling does. But for me, Kimiko and Frenchie were better before romance. They were stronger, more original, more emotionally layered. And in trying to make their relationship more, the show may have accidentally made it less. But hey, prove me wrong. Do you think Kimiko and Frenchie should have stayed platonic? Or was romance always inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate is far from